Welcome to another AI pattern recognition deep dive.
Today, we're tackling something, well, it feels very futuristic, but it's actually an age-old idea. Imagine a world where machines do all the hard work, the boring stuff. Even Aristotle, way back, he talked about self-weaving looms, self-playing instruments. He thought, maybe we wouldn't need assistants or slaves anymore. And here we are, thousands of years later, wrestling with basically the same idea, but now it's AI. So the big question for this deep dive: could an AI actually figure out, satisfaction hours for you, for us, if work isn't the main thing in our lives anymore?
It's a huge question, isn't it? And it really cuts to the core of, well, what does it mean to be human when machines get smarter and smarter? So our mission today is to kind of unpack these massive economic shifts AI is causing. We'll look at what AI can do, which is amazing, but also where its limits are. And fundamentally, how do we rethink human purpose if jobs, as we know them, change drastically? We've got research history, some cool real-world trials to look at.
Okay, let's dive in. This whole worry about machines taking jobs, it's not exactly new, is it? I mean, John Maynard Keynes coined technological unemployment back in the 30s. He seemed pretty optimistic, called it a temporary phase of maladjustment, like we'd just figure it out.
Right. He did offer that maybe slightly comforting view. But history paints a much messier picture, I think. If you look back at the first industrial revolution, that's a huge precedent. It shows just how deeply unsettling job displacement can be. You had groups like the Luddites actively smashing machines, and they were just being irrational. They were, fighting to protect their livelihoods, their communities, the whole social fabric. This resistance, it's a recurring theme. It's a very human response to massive change.
Yeah, and you mentioned a really surprising historical tidbit that highlights this perfectly.
Oh, yeah, the Queen Elizabeth story is fascinating. She was shown this new knitting machine, incredibly efficient for its time. But she refused to grant it a patent. Why? Because she was genuinely worried it would put her subjects out of work, make them poor. So it wasn't about ignoring progress. It was a conscious policy choice, showing that how technology impacts us depends on the decisions we make, not some unstoppable force.
That's such a powerful reminder, and it really gets at the core paradox here, doesn't it? On one side, you have this promise of total automation, unprecedented abundance. Machines could meet all our basic needs, the bottom levels of Maslow's hierarchy: food, shelter, safety, sorted. But then the flip side is this potential for a massive existential crisis. For centuries, work has been tied up with everything: our identity, social status, purpose. So if that goes, the big question for you, the listener, becomes: how do we individually and as a society define value? Where do we find meaning, if not in our jobs? That's a fundamental shift. Okay, so bringing it to today, what's actually happening now with AI in the economy? This isn't science fiction anymore.
No, absolutely not. It's well underway. The IMF figures are pretty attention-grabbing. They estimate around 40% of jobs worldwide are exposed to AI right now. And that number jumps to nearly 60% in advanced economies like the US or Europe.
Exposed. Okay, what does that actually mean? Does exposed equal gone?
Not necessarily. That's a key distinction. Exposed means AI could potentially impact the job. Roughly half of those exposed jobs, the thinking goes, will likely be complemented by AI. So AI helps people do their jobs better, maybe faster, or handle more complex tasks. Think AI assisting a doctor with diagnosis, for example. But the other half, they face potential displacement. The tasks might be fully automated away.
So some jobs change, others might vanish. Can you give some concrete examples of roles already feeling the heat?
Sure. We're already seeing it quite clearly in roles like telemarketing, cashiers, travel agents, taxi dispatchers. Assembly line work is another classic example. Basically, tasks that are repetitive, data-heavy, or involve predictable physical actions are prime candidates for automation. And it's creeping into other areas, too. Think sports officiating using instant replay tech or automated sorting in postal services. It's pretty widespread.
That definitely sounds disruptive, but is it all doom and gloom, or is AI also creating new kinds of work?
That's the crucial other side of the coin, yeah. It's definitely not just displacement. The World Economic Forum, for instance, projects that while maybe 92 million jobs could be displaced globally this decade, they also predict around 170 million new jobs will be created. So that's a net increase of about 78 million jobs.
Wow, okay, so what kind of new jobs are we talking about?
They tend to be in fields directly related to the new technology AI specialists, machine learning engineers, big data analysts, also renewable energy techs, sustainability roles, and importantly, jobs in the care economy, healthcare workers, elder care, education, roles that require strong interpersonal skills. What ties these together is they demand uniquely human skills: creativity, Critical thinking, social influence, emotional intelligence, empathy, stuff AI, at least for now, is not very good at. So it's less about work disappearing entirely and more a massive reshaping of the labor market towards these human-centric skills.
That shift sounds promising, but history has taught us painful lessons about who actually benefits from these big technological leaps, right? The Industrial Revolution wasn't great for everyone initially.
Absolutely. That's a vital lesson. Look at the textile industry again. Power looms boosted productivity massively. But did the wages of the hand loom weavers, the ones being displaced, shoot up? No. They stagnated or even fell for decades. The wealth generated flowed overwhelmingly to the factory owners, the people who own the capital, the machines. It illustrates a pretty stark economic principle. Automation can boost overall economic output, average productivity goes up, but at the same time it can reduce the value of what an individual worker adds at the margin. Their marginal productivity decreases.
Right. So the pie gets bigger, but the worker's slice might actually shrink if they're competing with cheaper machines.
Exactly. And the concern is that AI could put this trend on steroids. Early research suggests AI might actually exacerbate inequality. It could concentrate wealth even further among the highest earners and in countries that have the infrastructure and expertise to deploy AI effectively. Which brings us back to policy. How the economic gains from AI get distributed, that's not predetermined. It comes down to the choices we make, the policies we implement.
A crucial point. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. This idea of working less, it feels linked to this AI future, maybe even a solution. But it's not just theoretical, is it? People are actually trying this out.
They are. And the results are genuinely fascinating. It's one of the most tangible pieces of this puzzle we can look at right now. Take Iceland, for example. Between 2015 and 2017, they ran these huge trials. Over 2,500 workers, like 1% of their entire workforce, across different jobs. They reduced their hours from 40 down to 35 or 36. And crucially, no pay cut.
And what happened? Did productivity tank?
Quite the opposite, actually. Productivity either stayed the same or, in many cases, increased. Teams found ways to work smarter, shorter meetings, better focus, cutting out wasted time. But maybe even more importantly, worker well-being went way up. People reported less stress, better work-life balance, more time for family, hobbies, just feeling healthier.
That's pretty compelling. Are there other examples backing this up?
Yeah, definitely. Microsoft Japan did a trial in 2019 with a 4-day week. They saw a, frankly, stunning 40% jump in productivity. Employees were happier too. And there's a company in New Zealand, Perpetual Guardian, they did it too. Increased engagement, less stress. And so these aren't just flukes. There's a growing body of evidence suggesting that working smarter, not necessarily longer, can be better for everyone, employees. And the bottom line challenges the old more hours equals more output idea.
Okay, that sounds great for, say, office workers. But does it work everywhere? I'm thinking about nurses, teachers, jobs where hours seem directly tied to the service.
That's the critical nuance. You're right. It's not a magic bullet for every single sector.
Yeah.
The successes we've seen are often in roles where tasks can be reorganized, streamlined, or where some level of automation can help. But in fields like healthcare or education, simply cutting hours without also increasing staffing levels could absolutely lead to higher costs or, worse, lower quality of service. That's a real concern. So implementing this requires careful thought about the specific context. It's often less about just cutting hours and more about fundamentally redesigning how work gets done in different industries.
Got it. So work is changing, maybe we'll work less. Which brings us back full circle to the listener's question. Could an AI, given all this potential free time, actually calculate the optimal satisfaction hours for you? Tell you how to spend your time to be happiest?
Yeah, the million-dollar question, maybe the trillion-dollar AI question. Yeah. And after digging into the research looking at AI capabilities, the answer seems to be a pretty definitive no. Now, AI has made incredible leaps in modeling human behavior. We have things like Centaur, BFM. These are sophisticated models. They're trained on tons of psychological data, and they can predict human choices in experiments with like 54% accuracy, which is impressive. But calculating universal satisfaction hours, that's a whole different ballgame, and fundamentally, AI can't do it meaningfully.
Okay, why not? What's the barrier? If they can model our choices so well?
Several huge reasons. First, and maybe foremost, human satisfaction is just deeply, deeply subjective. It's personal, it changes moment to moment, context matters hugely, and algorithm. It doesn't have subjective experience. It doesn't have consciousness. It can't feel joy or sorrow or contentment. It can recognize patterns associated with emotion and data, sure, but it can't understand nuance, sarcasm, irony, cultural subtleties that completely change meaning. It sees the notes, but doesn't hear the music, you could say.
Right, it can see the smile emoji, but doesn't know if it's genuine or sarcastic.
Exactly. That kind of thing. Second, AI lacks genuine common sense reasoning. It's powerful within the bounds of its training data. But faced with something truly novel, something slightly outside the patterns it learned, it can fail spectacularly. It doesn't generalize understanding or use intuition like we do. And then there's the data issue again, but from a different angle. AI learns from the past. If you asked an AI to prescribe satisfaction based on historical data, it would likely just reinforce existing societal norms, biases, maybe even harmful stereotypes about what constitutes a good or satisfying life. It sees the patterns of what has been, but so much of human progress, of being human, is about breaking those patterns, challenging norms, innovating, creating something new. AI doesn't do that. It reflects. It doesn't transcend.
That's a really crucial point. Our humanity is often in breaking the mold, not fitting it perfectly. So if AI can't be the satisfaction guru, what is its best role in helping us live better, more fulfilling lives?
I think its best role is as a powerful, personalized assistant.
Yeah.
Think of it as removing friction. Imagine an AI handling all the grunt work, managing your inbox, scheduling meetings, tracking project details, finding information you need, all that low-value, repetitive stuff that drains our cognitive energy. That frees us up. It gives us back time and mental bandwidth to focus on what actually matters to us. Creative projects, learning new skills, spending quality time with people, contributing to our communities. The AI streamlines the how, maybe even suggest personalized learning paths based on your goals, but you remain firmly in charge of the what and the why. It's a tool, a facilitator, not a director.
Okay, so AI handles the boring stuff, we get more free time, but then what? If our identity isn't tied to our job title anymore, where does purpose come from? That's the big existential question looming.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And maybe the most profound shift we need to navigate. The first step, I think, is realizing that our current work ethic, this idea that work is inherently virtuous and central to life, isn't some timeless human truth. It's largely a social construct with roots in 16th century Protestantism and turbocharged by 19th century industrial capitalism. And the good news about social constructs? They can be deconstructed. We can build something new. We're already seeing cracks in the old model anyway. There's talk of a crisis of meaningful work, people feeling disillusioned with bullshit jobs, as David Graeber called them, roles that feel pointless. People increasingly want meaning from their work, not just a paycheck. So AI stripping away the mundane might actually force a collective conversation we're already starting to have. What really matters? What gives life meaning beyond the 9 to 5? This opens the door to reimagining leisure, not just as downtime, recovery from work, but as something central, active, and transformative. Organizations like the World Leisure Organization talk about leisure as key to quality of life, fostering growth, creativity, community, self-reflection. Think about having real time for lifelong learning, deeper civic participation, artistic pursuits, building stronger relationships. That's where deep satisfaction often lies.
And how does this connect to mental well-being? We hear so much concern, especially among young people, about anxiety, job insecurity, a kind of hopelessness. Could a post-labor world make that worse or better?
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? On one hand, stripping away the structure and identity provided by work could absolutely worsen feelings of drift and despair if we don't create alternative frameworks for meaning. But on the other hand, it's a massive opportunity, an opportunity to build lives centered around personal growth, community contribution, intrinsic motivation, rather than just economic output. It could foster psychological resilience. We do need to be wary of pitfalls. Thorstein Veblen warned over a century ago about a leisure class using non-work activities simply to signal status-conspicuous leisure. We could see new hierarchies emerge based on who has the most interesting hobbies or travels. But there's also a counter-trend, a fun ethic emerging, focused on personal enrichment, experiences, self-actualization. The challenge is to consciously build social structures, community centers, arts funding, accessible education that support that version of leisure, valuing connection and creativity over status display. It's about shifting societal values.
So it really comes down to conscious choices, building a different kind of society, not just letting the technology dictate terms.
Exactly. And that's where policy becomes absolutely critical. Universal Basic Income, UBI, often comes up here. It's pretty simple in concept. A regular, unconditional payment to every citizen, providing a safety net regardless of employment.
UBI sounds good in theory, but does it actually work? Is there evidence?
There's quite a bit of growing evidence from pilots around the world, actually. In Namibia, a UBI pilot slashed household poverty dramatically from 76% down to 37% and cut child malnutrition rates significantly. Trials in places like Brazil, Canada, Kenya showed improvements in mental and physical health, less stress, anxiety, depression. The idea is that UBI provides that basic security, freeing people up to pursue education, start businesses, care for family, or find more meaningful work, even if it pays less. It meets those foundational needs Maslow talked about, allowing focus on higher-level goals. Even tech leaders like Sam Altman see it as a potential way to share the immense wealth AI is expected to generate.
But UBI isn't without its critics, right? What are the main pushbacks or challenges?
Well, absolutely. It's hotly debated. Big concerns include, will it cause massive inflation? Will people just stop working, leading to labor shortages? And of course, how do you possibly pay for it without crippling taxes or debt? These are serious questions. Researchers are tackling them by looking at different funding models, things like carbon taxes, taxes on wealth or AI profits, and by studying the real-world impacts on work incentives in trials. Interestingly, many pilots haven't shown a huge drop in work participation. People often use the money to gain skills, find better jobs, or do essential unpaid work like caregiving. But yeah, scaling it up is a massive economic and political challenge. There's no easy answer yet. Ultimately, it highlights the choice we face. There's the potential utopia. AI handles the drudgery, wealth is shared broadly, humans are free to pursue purpose, creativity, connection. The fun ethic wins out. But there's also a dystopian risk. Wealth gets even more concentrated, most people face a crisis of meaning, new social divides emerge based on leisure or AI access, and AI is used more for control than liberation. Which path we take isn't up to the AI, it's up to us. It's about the policies we enact and the culture we choose to build.
So, if we want to steer towards that more positive future, what concrete steps can we take? How do we build that culture of purpose beyond work?
It requires action on multiple fronts. Education is huge. We need to shift focus from just job training to cultivating those uniquely human skills. Critical thinking, creativity, emotional intelligence, adaptability, resilience. Lifelong learning needs to become the norm, accessible to everyone. We also need serious investment in the social infrastructure libraries, community centers, parks, arts programs, platforms for civic engagement. These are the places where people connect, learn, create, and find meaning outside of paid employment. They become vital. It's about equipping people not just with job skills, but with the psychological and social tools to navigate a world where purpose might be more self-defined and community-oriented, building a society that truly values well-being, not just GDP.
This has been incredibly illuminating. It really drives home that an AI calculating satisfaction hours isn't just technically impossible, it's missing the point entirely. Human purpose, our identity, our sense of flourishing, these aren't data points an algorithm can optimize. Like you said, the patterns AI finds are reflections of the past, biases and all. Our real humanity shines when we choose to break those patterns, to create something new, to define meaning for ourselves.
Precisely. This AI revolution isn't fundamentally a technological threat to be feared. It's more like an unprecedented invitation, an invitation to collectively step back and ask ourselves, what do we really value? What kind of society do we want to build now that the old anchor of work might be shifting? We've seen that work as we know it is a construct. That means we can construct something different. Policies like UBI can help create the foundation. Cultural shifts towards valuing learning, creativity, community connection, those are the walls and roof of the new structure.
So the final thought for you, the listener, is this. When that historical anchor of work eventually lifts, maybe gradually, maybe faster than we think, what uniquely human qualities will you choose to focus on? Your creativity, your empathy, your connections. How will you start redefining your own sense of purpose in a world potentially reshaped by AI?
A profound question indeed, something for all of us to grapple with.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
We'll see you soon.
This is DigitView.